All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to be presenting MarketTouch's specialty pharmacy solution. I'm Mike Cook. I'm the National Sales Director for MarketTouch. I've been with MarketTouch for about 19 years and have been working in the communication field, providing and deploying and implementing communication programs for various industries for over 20 years. Matt?
And this is Matt Feldman. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Services. I've been with the MarketTouch team for 2 years now, pharmacist for nearly 30 years in a variety of roles in retail, corporate, and PBM.
Here's the footprint of MarketTouch. We are based in Houston, Texas. We have a mirrored site in Denver, Colorado. Between Houston and Austin sits about 90% of the company's personnel. And we have developers, programmers, client services personnel there. But we do have offices nationwide. We are an independently owned and operated company, and we've been providing communication engagement solutions since 2001. Today, we're doing over 300 million annual communications, both inbound and outbound communications for patients in the healthcare industry. We are a 100% hosted solution, and what we mean by that is that we have, every program and in every service that I'm going to present today is implemented and managed on our platforms. We're not asking you to install hardware or software of any kind. And being a hosted solution, as you can imagine, our service uptime needs to be significantly high. Right now, we are reporting and clocking it at 99.99% of uptime. So everything that we do develop and maintain is done by MarketTouch employees in the U.S., and we do not use any third-party contractors at all. So this is a slide that I think really demonstrates and shows how MarketTouch has evolved in the healthcare space over the years. Beginning in 2001, if we go to the very bottom of the page, we've started providing outbound notifications to pharmacies, letting patients know that their prescriptions are ready to be picked up. As you can imagine, outbound notification has evolved over the years to include text messaging and push notifications and email and whatever modes available to us. So we've evolved in that space over the years. In 2006, we moved to web solutions when we saw that patients wanted to go online and do certain things, interact with the pharmacy via a website. 2010 is when we moved into the health and wellness scheduler. So it's a patient-facing scheduler where they're able to go on and book an appointment with their pharmacy. In 2011 is when we started developing mobile apps. So we put together a development team and had pushed a mobile app framework out for pharmacy in 2011. And it was in 2012 that we moved into Pharmacist Connect, which is our clinical platform. And from that clinical platform, we run what is Optimum MedSync and all clinical solutions for pharmacy. It was in 2016 that we moved to Central IVR, providing an inbound IVR solution for patients to call into and process refills and do various other things. It's a very robust inbound IVR system. And it was in 2018 that we began with specialty pharmacy solutions. And that beginning really started with trying to understand where it was that MarketTouch could sit in this industry, providing what sort of services we could provide. And really the driver of us going into specialty pharmacy was that we had a number of retail clients moving into the specialty space, and they wanted a solution that we could present to them. So what we did is we spoke to a very large number of specialty pharmacies and understood that we needed to be able to leverage our existing technology, our existing services that we had. Our goal really was to increase the efficiency and support your compliance efforts so that these specialty pharmacies could focus more on the patient. So what we came up with is 3 programs, the first being touchpoint management. And what touchpoint management is the delivery of notifications to patients, interactive, automated notifications via voice and text and email, driving interactivity without the use of a live person making that phone call. The second program that we developed was the compliance management program. And these are certain services that are developed to assist in your obligation that you have to your creditors, whether it be UREC or ACHC, or any obligations or commitments that you have to manufacturers as far as collecting data points and that sort of thing. And the last program that we developed was the clinical management program, or platform, utilizing Pharmacist Connect. And that's something that Matt is going to speak to at the very end of this presentation. Again, we're a hosted solution, so everything that we provide is done through our platforms. It's a low-cost alternative to hardware, and there is no internal maintenance. So first, I'm going to go through touchpoint management. And as we define touchpoint management, it's the delivery of static and interactive outbound notifications via voice, text messaging, and email. So everything that we do is very custom to the client. How you communicate with your patients is how we develop these outbound notifications. So some of the features that we have built into our messaging is that we can determine the difference between a live person that answers the phone and a machine or a voicemail. This is important when we're delivering voice messaging. And we're able to say, hey, there's a live person on the phone. Let's try to interact with them. So we deliver a series of interactive messaging if it's asking them a question, getting a response, or it's encouraging them to opt in for text messaging. And I'll speak a little bit more about opting in further down the presentation. The next feature that we have is where we're able to tell if we're calling a landline or a wireless phone. And this is important because if we're calling a wireless phone, we can get them to opt in. We can simply ask, if you would like us not to call your cell phone and you would like to opt in for text messaging, press 1 now. And the last thing is that we're able to customize the messaging with very specific disease states, medication, therapy inserts into the message. It can be very custom to the patient, which of course is requiring that we go through some PHI, some HIPAA type of messaging prior to, or identifying the patient prior to providing any sort of specific medication or therapy information. The next part of this is integration. It's how you get the data to us. So delivering data to us is very important, and this could be done in a few different fashions. One of the fashions is that we can pull it from the API that we potentially have with your pharmacy system. So the delivery of this data can come through the API. We can then process the notification and return the data through the API itself back into your pharmacy system. In lieu of having the API and working with if you're working with a pharmacy system that really doesn't lend itself well to integrating with other third-party vendors, then we could use flat file delivery to our SFTP site, or we could utilize XML, or you could write directly into our API. So there's quite a few options, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. And of course, that's worked out when we're going through the discovery process and the implementation planning and that sort of thing. The next thing that I want to talk about is the patient preference interface, and this is something that MarketTouch has a patent on. So when it comes to opting in patients to text messaging, and we're really motivated to do that, and we encourage our clients to do it all the time. And it's partly because that we're getting anywhere from a 10 to 20% increase on responses via voice messaging or voice delivery of pre-recorded messages. So we're really motivated to opt as many patients as we can into text messaging. So what the patient preference interface is there to do is promote, capture, and manage patient text messaging. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. The next thing is volume toggling. So when we're delivering notifications to patients throughout the day, we want to be very careful that we're delivering them during the times that your call center isn't extremely busy. So if we know that your call center between 9 a.m. and noon on a Monday morning is extremely busy and they can't generate any more inbound calls than they're currently managing right now, we would toggle that volume. We would then set business rules in the flow of this notification process to make sure that there's no notifications going out between that time period. And that really is so we're not generating any inbound response back to the call center. The next portion of this is custom management and reporting and data delivery. So data into us, if it's coming through an SFTP site so that we're capturing it and sending the notifications out, any sort of data in would be very custom. So we would work with your IT team to see what type of flat file it could generate to come into our SFTP site. And then the data out and the reporting, the frequency of the reporting, the frequency of how we deliver data back to you. There are certain notifications that require a daily return of a file. Some require an hourly, some require almost a real-time data return back to you. We would then work through each process, each notification, both data in and data out. And the last thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is the escalation process. And the escalation process really has to do with each notification has some call to action. You're generating some interest, some notification, some sort of question, Q&A, and at the end of that, there's some sort of escalation process for each notification. That escalation process could be they're experiencing side effects. We need to transfer the notification back, or we need to transfer the patient into the pharmacy. They rated their customer satisfaction very low. We want to red flag this and send this to somebody at your pharmacy that manages QC. So with each notification, we not only identify the data in and out, the call to action, the interactivity, but there's also, we have to identify the escalation. How do we escalate anything that needs to be brought to the pharmacist's attention? So when it comes to touch point management, here's how it works. It begins with the pharmacy. We work out what notifications they've identified as something they'd like to automate. It could be shipment notification. So the shipment notifications, then we generate a file, or it could come through the API, or it could go through XML or into our API. Whatever it is, we're generating data into MarketTouch. MarketTouch then grabs the data, and based on where the data is being sent, how it's being sent, we're able to identify what notification type it is. So in this case, it's the shipment notification. We then run it through the patient preference interface to identify if they've opted in for text messaging, if they're a do not call, if they're a voice only, or if they're live only. Whatever their preference is, we then pull it from this area now. We then grab the program-specific messaging. So if it's a text message or if it's a voice message, this is where we're grabbing not only the shipment notification message, but it's a text message, so here's the text that we're grabbing. And the last part of this is that we apply all business rules to it. So if we're sending out the notification, but we're not sending it until afternoon on Monday, this is where we grab that information. Then we generate the notification out to the patient. So each notification is either going to be a static notification, meaning it's just information delivery, or it's an interactive message where we ask a question and get an answer. But there's always some other notification, or we're always driving them to another path. First, that if we're calling a patient about shipment notification, and we see that we're calling them a mobile phone, we would ask them if they'd like to opt in for text messaging in the future. If we do get a response to say they are experiencing side effects, or they do need to speak to the pharmacy, then the escalation would go back to the pharmacy in the form of a phone call that we're transferring, in the form of a text message that we're sending to somebody that's managing quality control at the pharmacy, or it could be something as simple as the pharmacist needs to get a message because the patient is experiencing something. And the last is that once we go through the interactive process and we collect all of this data, we are then responding and returning data back to you. So this is the last path to the pharmacy, and this is the demonstration of how this program works. So what I thought I'd do is just run you through kind of a typical sample, or just a sample of what touchpoint management might look like during the course of anyone's therapy. So if we begin here with the start of therapy and you have the initial consultation call with the patient, This is a notification that would go out letting them know that somebody is going to call them tomorrow. Here's the caller ID that you're going to see. It's important that we speak to you tomorrow because the filling of your prescription is counting on it. So what the goal of this notification is to drive down the number of repeat calls that you're having to make to the patient to get them live and on the phone. And what we've seen over the months and years now of doing this type of notification, that we've seen a 50% decrease in the number of repeat calls. Or if you're calling a patient 7 times, that's going to be reduced down to 3.5 times. The next notification in this series is the shipment notification. And this is delivering a message to the patient, letting them know that their shipment is, or their prescription is being processed right now, shipment is going out tomorrow, here's the carrier information and the tracking information. So text messages that we're sending out to the patient includes the tracking number, and if they do click on that, it's hot linked into the carrier site that they can get detailed information on the delivery itself. This notification could be very custom to the medication itself. So if it's a cold pack med that's being sent to the patient's house and somebody needs to be there to get it off the doorstep, we could send a message out to the patient asking them if somebody's going to be home tomorrow to pick this up. It's important that it's not sitting on your doorstep. So we can interact with patients, ask them questions, alert them of certain things. So it could be very custom, not only to the medication, but to the therapy and that sort of thing. The next one is confirmation that the med's been received. So once we have the medication delivered, we can send a follow-up message asking them, do you have meds in hand? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, or reply yes on a text message. With these types of interactive messages, what we're seeing is better than a 48% response on these types of interactive messages. And that what that means to us is that when we send out a group of notifications going out to a patient, asking them various questions, whether it be through voice or through text messaging, on average, we're seeing a 48% response. The next is a mid-month consultation or a reminder that somebody is going to visit their home. These notifications are going out. Again, if it's a mid-month consultation, you need to speak to them live prior to their next refill or to ask them certain clinical questions, then these notifications are going out to patients, letting them know that somebody's going to call them tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Please answer the phone. It's important that we speak to you prior to your next refill. And again, what we're seeing is a 50% response on multiple calls having been made to the patient. The next is a clinical survey, so an adherence survey. It's information going out to the patient, asking them various questions. These surveys are typically 4 to 5 questions long, asking them specific information to give you specific information on their medication, their therapy, how are they doing, are they experiencing any side effects, how many doses do you have left, are you having any trouble administering the medication, are you being good about taking your medication? And so there's a number of questions that we can ask. And these are, again, if it's a text message going out, we're asking a question, we're getting a response, we're asking an additional question. If it's a voice call, we're asking them, again, we're asking them a verbal question, we're getting a touch tone response, we're then moving on to the next question. So as far as the response rates that we're getting, we're seeing better than a 40% completion of these interactive these interactive messaging services. Voice is typically at 38%, text messages 46%, and when it comes to escalation, so if we're seeing that there's side effects or their dosage is just way off, or they need to be transferred into the pharmacy to really dig down deep to what's going on with their therapy, we're getting a better than 80% successful transfer into the pharmacy. So on a voice message, we ask a question, we get a response that fits in a certain category. We then say, just one moment, we're going to transfer you into the pharmacy. Those transfers are happening at a better than 80% response. And the last one I wanted to go over is refill notifications. We have some clients that prefer to just simply transfer refill calls back into the pharmacy, thus generating this inbound response into the pharmacy. And so they don't have to call the patient prior to their next refill. We're basically sending them to the pharmacy. While others are asking us to do the full refill survey and capturing their refill responses. So, questions like, has your shipping address changed from this? Do you have a change of insurance? Are you okay with this copay amount? Are you ready for your next refill? So we can run them through a series of questions all the way up through capturing their response to, would you like your refill now? And collect all that information and return that information back to the pharmacy. So what we're seeing on these refill notifications is that we're getting a better than 45% completion of these interactive messages. And what we're seeing is we're getting a 42% on voice and a 49% on text messaging. Again, text messaging is generally higher, so we're encouraging patients to opt in as any chance we get. Again, this is showing an 80% successful transfer into the pharmacy. So one of those questions, has your address changed or has your insurance changed? If we get a response that says, yes, my insurance has changed, we're going to attempt to transfer those patients into the pharmacy so they can actually complete the change of insurance or address or whatever. And so the last part of this cycle has to do with patient satisfaction survey. URAC and some of your manufacturers may require that you collect data points throughout the year for a particular patient. Some of them have to call and collect these data points each month, while others are doing it once a year or quarterly. What we're able to do is launch a notification going out to the patient. Ask them or encourage them to participate in the survey. We're then driving the survey, we're driving the patients into either an interactive IVR survey for them to utilize a touch tone response to complete it, while some were actually completing a text version of that survey. So our goal is really to automate this process, to make sure it's timely, to make sure that how the questions are being asked are done consistently, and keeping the cost down on these patient satisfaction surveys. I know there's some companies out there that are doing these surveys that are pretty expensive. So we're keeping the costs down. We're generating this on a timely manner. We're asking a very consistent question. And more importantly, we are returning data back to you and reports back to you that are showing net promoter scores, a summary of each of the questions, comments, detail. There's a lot of information that you can use from a quality control standard to grab and to contact the patient and to fix whatever problem that might exist between you and the patient. What our response is better than 20%. So of these notifications we're sending out and patients that are entering the survey to complete the survey, we're getting a better than 20% response on these. So just a few additional notifications that we have, and I'll just go over these briefly. A health status check. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Simple questions like that require simple responses. These are notifications that can be sent out in a very specific time frame, asking very specific questions. They can be done quarterly, annually. The time frame is really driven by our clients. The next notification is collections notifications. It's really there to let them know that there's potentially a past due amount on their account that we need to speak to, and it's driving inbound calls back to the pharmacy. And the last one is a daily request or a daily pill reminder. Sending notifications out to the patients, asking them if they've taken their medication. These can be done very specific times during the day. Could be done first thing in the morning or right before bed or any time in between. If we go a couple of days without getting a response from a patient, we will then red flag that, send that information to the pharmacy so that they can get in contact with them. I know there are certain medications, certain therapies that require such a very demanding and very in touch type of relationship with the patient, and this is some way that you can automate that feature. So that was touchpoint management, and we're very proud of the service. It's something that we've rolled out and have been managing for some time now, and we're getting better responses. We're figuring out new ways how to continue on and improve those numbers, and everything that we do with these campaign-style type touchpoint management messaging is that it's very custom. And it's very driven by how the pharmacy is currently communicating with their patients. So just real quick, the second part of this is compliance management. And we have already spoken about the patient satisfaction survey. So collecting data points from patients during whether it's their anniversary or it's quarterly or it's after their first month of therapy. However, this is driven timeline-wise on your side. We're collecting this information in a very timely manner, and everyththing that's reported on is presenting a Net Promoter Score, and it's something that is formatted to lend itself well to URAC audits and any manufacturer obligations. But the second part of our compliance management program has to do with inbound IVR. So we've noticed that there's a lot of specialty pharmacies out there, smaller independent specialty pharmacies that just aren't able to make the big investment into an IVR system, an inbound IVR system that will produce call metrics, whether they be average abandonment, speed of answer, blockage, those metrics that are needed to give URAC and to track how well you're managing the inbound calls from patients. So MarketTouch offers a very low-cost solution for providing those inbound or an inbound service and those call metrics themselves. So our next section that I wanted to go over had to do with our clinical platform, Pharmacist Connect. And I'm going to ask Matt to go ahead and speak to this. Matt?
Thank you, Mike. Pharmacist Connect is our single web-based platform that houses all of our clinical solutions. And as Mike shared, we have a variety of outbound, inbound communication services for specialty. And know that Pharmacist Connect works integrated. We understand that specialty pharmacy is an extraordinarily high-touch service. And from time to time, in addition to those outbound notifications and inbound messaging that Mike shared with the touch point management and compliance management tools, we offer Pharmacist Connect. The data is derived using the same data that would be shared with Mike. It comes from your pharmacy operating system, or we can even establish a custom data feed interface. It provides a dialer functionality. So your call center and nurse specialists can do outreach that complements the outbound calls and the other quality initiatives that you have. It's single sign-on compatible, and it's work queue driven because your pharmacy operating system is work queue driven. So we built it in that same vein. It's built to help you focus on quality improvement measures such as adverse drug events, side effects, any barriers to adherence or care that that patient might have. The way that the solution works is that you log into the system, and it's a series of interrogatories like a MTM or a CMR that you conduct with the patient and capture their responses. And that way, the data capture allows you to create follow-ups that either align with or are separate from the touchpoint management solutions. But then also it creates a robust set of reporting that you can use for your quality metrics, accreditations, and quality improvement initiatives. We know that the Pharmacist Connect tool would be a great companion to any of the solutions in the specialty pharmacy space. Mike? You may be on mute.
Thanks, Matt. So the market touch difference, especially we see the specialty pharmacy solution as a very unique and innovative solution in that it is a system that can be triggered and work with any pharmacy system out there. It can work with flat files, it can work with XML, it can work with API. It's inclusive of all of your patients. So the fact that we're delivering voice and text and email, we can include all of your patients. It's a service that offers numerous modes of communication pathways to your patients, and it works with all of your patients. The next is it truly provides value in that we're able to automate certain communications out to your patients each month, thus saving any cost of personnel or man-hour, where you can divert those into things that really need to be taken care of personally with the patient. So it is a service that is built to really accomplish cost savings and timely and consistent messaging to your patients. So as Market Touch sits here and we're providing this type of service, it's important that you know that there's dedicated teams that are focused on this consultative type of development. So all of our teams are really geared towards working with our clients to understand how they're communicating, to see what opportunities there are to automate certain touch points, to provide consistent, timely manner or communications going out to the patient. And we do this in a team environment, working with our head of clinical, our sales group, our client services group, and our clients. The next is having to do with the creative technical solutions. Everything that we do is managed in-house, and it's done with speed and accuracy. We're not outsourcing any part of this solution to any other country or any other company. And again, we're using the best practices that have been built on 20 years of experience on what's the best way to communicate to patients, what's the best opportunity that we have to complete interactive messaging and that sort of thing. So we encourage you to give us a call, email us if you have any questions or any ideas, or if you have a better solution that you would like to talk to us about. We are here and ready to take your calls. As you can see here on the lower right-hand corner, it's our numbers. This is Mike Cook speaking, and here's my information. If you'd like to talk clinical with Matt Feltman, there's his information as well. We appreciate you listening to this, and we look forward to meeting you in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you.